the window and I struggle for something to say. You left in the rain without closing the door, but I didn't stand in your way. Now I miss you more than I missed you before, and now where I'll find comfort, God knows, 'cause you.
Thank you for the breath of life. We give you all the glory, we worship you, we adore you. We say be thou exalted in Jesus' name. Lord, we thank you for bringing us together once again, joining mercies from our various locations. Father, we thank you for your mercy that will continue to be upon us today. Father, we say, Lord, be thou glorified in Jesus' name. We commit today's training into your able hand. We ask the Lord that you will impart us yourself in Jesus' name. Every method that will be used to teach us today, you give us understanding, and at the end, over your name shall be glorified. Thank you, everlasting Father, for in Jesus' name we have prayed.
Thank you very much, sir. And I would also like to thank God on our behalf that despite all that has been happening all over the world in the last 2 years, we are still here on our feet. We are still standing. Let's bring glory to God. We thank God that we are here. We magnify His name, that is all we have been counted worthy to be here this morning. Be that as it may, I'd like to introduce some of our directors here present. I'll start from the person that is representing the DG, the ED, and in his own capacity too, is the Director of Project, Mr. Babatunde Yusuf. So, sitting right beside him is the Director Inspectorate, the person I put to. Thank you very much. Please give her a big round of applause. You're welcome. And I have some of our, okay, as time goes on, I will do the presentation. My humble self, Miriam, I express something here. Thank you very much. Thank you. You are all welcome once again. I'll now invite who is himself the Director Project, Lagos State Pension Commission, to please come out.
Like he says, my name is Contributory. I'm the Director in charge of personal projects for an interactive session. And this is going to be an update on executing pension processes and administration. The objective of this seminar is to get you, the participant, familiarized with your desk work and, of course, administration of pension in your respective station as we get away from here. Now, at the end of this seminar, it is expected that everybody will be adequately equipped to discharge the duties we are there to start for the state at our administrative stations and desks. Therefore, I would like this seminar to have a little blend of workshop, whereas the participants will be able to participate very well, ask questions, and then go deep on some issues. Now, the program will commence with administration of pension, of retirement benefit and financial awareness, and that will be handled by our stakeholder, Leadway Pension, and I'm sure they're going to do justice to that. Now, the session 2 is going to be on overview of RSA transfer processes. Of course, that's and it is expected that, of course, after you have been given all this knowledge, you go back and then pass it to the people you are supposed to pass it to. Now, of course, and assumptions used in the valuation of retirement benefits. This is also very critical. And of course, some of the time, people will be getting confused. We enter service the same day. We are even the same age. Sometimes, okay, we even have the same sex sometimes. Or sometimes we don't have the same. The director in charge Mrs. Makinde. Now, the session 4 is going to be handled by our lawyer. This is our legal luminary, Bimbo, Mrs. Bimbo Akintayo. It's going to be on annuity plan. You will recall that of course, you know that some of these retirees, they get confused between the PFA operations, the annuity, and at the time they will be going, they will be asking questions. What are those specific features of annuity plan and the PFA? So you will get enough information here that will equip you to be able to answer them and guide them correctly. And finally, it's going to be retirement documentation process by Mrs. Semiola Utubanjo. Of course, this is going to be an additional preparing before the DP, so that the problem of people moving up and down is right. Thank you very much.
Round of applause. Thank you. Yes, we are going to that session. The man prayed, did the opening prayer. Thank you, man.
Let's rise up. You will guide us through in the name of Jesus. Lord, we say at the end of everything, the glory shall be unto you in the name of Jesus. And Lord, you are God, enrich us more and more in knowledge in Jesus' name. Blessed be thy name, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray.
Thank you very much, man. And we have come to the end of the opening session. And we are going to do the photograph session before we start the training. Let's do the photograph on administration of retirement benefits and financial awareness at retirement. Okay, leadway pension. Leadway assurance. Please, pension. Okay, leadway pension. Pensure. Okay, please give her a big round of applause.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having us this morning. My name is Musumala Moye Balogun, and I work with Leadway Pension PFA. Today we're going to be taking you on the administration of retirement benefits and financial awareness at retirement. We understand the peculiarities involved in accessing pension benefits, and like Mommy said, we're all caregivers, and it's important to understand how all of these things work, so that when we're attending to our colleagues, our employees at work, we're able to answer most of the questions that will be coming up. So I have with me my colleague this morning, Olubumi Oshakipe. Thank you very much, and we're going to be taking this presentation together. The outline for today's presentation, we're also responsible to ensure that pension funds are properly invested, such that before everyone retires, we would have been able to accrue a lot of interest on your pension contributions to be sure that value is added to the money given to the PFA, and that you're able to have a very comfortable life at retirement. Also, the PFAs are responsible for the management of monthly pensions. So we don't just collect your contributions as PFAs. We don't just open RSA forms. It's also our responsibility to ensure that everyone that has worked in the public sector retires successfully and then is able to earn monthly pensions for as long as they are alive. Also, we have the pension fund custodians. Now, we have retirees come to us to say, I registered with Stanbic, I registered with Crusader, Leadway, my money is with you, I want my money and all sorts. So we always try to explain to customers that, okay, your money is with us, but your money is not with us. And then we hear customers say things like, I hear that the federal government wants to borrow money from this pension scheme. What's going to happen? Or your end is going to take my money away. You know, this is the part that makes it very solid. This scheme is like an improvement on the previous scheme, you know, where we had embezzlement and so many things that went wrong. So basically, the way this scheme has been operated, it's been formed in a way that we have checks and balances. Yes, when you register with the PFA, when you choose the PFA, you think that issues might come up with the PFA and all of that stuff. But no, The scheme has been designed such that the PFAs handle the administrative parts while we have the pension fund custodian. We refer to them as bankers in the industry. The way you have your normal commercial banks, we also have the pension fund custodian. They are the bankers of the PFA, and we don't have a lot of them in Nigeria. I think we have about 6 of them. So each PFA has at least 2 pension fund custodians that helps in the safekeeping of the pension fund. And the beautiful thing about this thing is that no PFA can, by their own doing, approach a PFC to say, can we get some money from this account? No. And this is where PENCOM comes into play. Now, before a PFC can release any sort of fund to a PFA or to an RSA holder, a retirement savings account holder, the PFA would need to have gotten an approval from the regulatory body, which is National Pensions Commission, and ensure that every PFA in Nigeria abides by the guidelines, the framework, and the rules that have been set to govern the pension industry. So you see, there are checks and balances. You don't have mismanagement of funds, you don't have embezzlement, and you don't have all of those things that will characterize with the failed pension scheme. So be at rest, the pension scheme is very secured, and it is well regulated. And of course, we have the last body, which is National Pensions Commission, and they're responsible, to monitor the scheme to ensure that everyone abides by the principles, by the regulations, and over the time, the industry has evolved. This wasn't how the pension industry was when it started in 2004. Policies have been reviewed. It started as just one portfolio, which is what we call the RSA account. We all know RSA. You open an RSA and everyone automatically flows into what we call the RSA account. However, this profile of RSA holders by dividing the RSA fund into 4 distinct funds. Now, there are some people refer to as people that are very young. They have quite a long time to retirement, and we refer to those people as they have large risk profile. For instance, say I'm 30 years old. It's expected that I retire at 65. I still have about 35 years to retirement. So it means that I can afford to bear as much risk as possible, meaning that my RSA contribution can be exposed to a lot of risk. Now, we have people that we refer to as they are prospective retirees. We're talking about people that have clocked 49, 50, and above. Such category of people are unable to absorb as much risk as someone that is just 30 or 40 can absorb, because if anything goes wrong with the pension contribution, then there will be a problem, because the person doesn't have enough time to make up those lost funds in the RSA. So what the multi-fund structure really is about is that it allows contributors go into pension portfolios that would enable them make as much return on investment on their pension contribution. Now we have the Fund 1. The Fund 1 pension portfolio basically is for customers that are below 50 years. So we say people that are 49 years and below. And basically what the Fund 4 fund type basically has to do with it has a lot of exposure into variable income instruments. I believe we all know what these variable income instruments are. We have the equities, we have the shares, and a lot of them, they are very risky, but then the returns on investment are huge. You can enter into the stock market or into the equity market with an expected return of investment rate of say 30%, and by the time you're exiting that investment, it can crash down to about 10%, and that's why we refer to it as variable income instruments. Now you agree with me that the risk involved in Fund 1 is very, very high, and because of this, PENCOM has said that anyone that goes to Fund 1 will be based on the individual's request. However, if you are 50 years and above, you would not be allowed to move your pension contributions into Fund 1 because of the risk involved, and then because you are close to retirement. So Fund 1 can only be moved into based on your age, and it will be based on your request. So you need to write a letter to your PFA to grant you access to move your pension contributions to Fund 1. Now we have the Fund 2. The Fund 2 is basically the defaulted portfolio for RSA contributions. Now, everybody is in Fund 2. Prior to now, everybody was in Fund 2. Now, if you're in Fund 2 and you're 49 years and below, you have a right to write to your PFA to request to move to Fund 1, provided you understand the territory you're moving into, provided you're below 50 years, and then you are able to abide by the policies that guide Fund 2 environment, Fund 1 environment. So everybody's in Fund 2. I am in Fund 2. I mean, a lot of us here will be in Fund 2, and just like our other colleagues will be in Fund 2. However, you actually have a right to move your funds to Fund 1 as long as you're not up to 50 years old, and it will be based on your request. So you can write your PFA, you can tell your employees to write their PFAs if they're very young and they know that they can get the fees that comes with it. The return on investment is actually very juicy. However, it's also very risky. So we have the Fund 3 investments. The Fund 3 portfolio is strictly for contributors that are 50 years and above. So for our special people in this category, they have about, say, 15 years to retirement. Some even retire as early as 50. We have people that exit employment at 50. We have those that live at 55, depending on what's applicable to you. Now, Fund 3 basically is not as risky as Fund 2 and then as Fund 1. We can see that on Fund 3, the maximum percentage of the portfolio being put into variable income instruments is just 20%. And then we have 80% of it going into fixed income instruments. Now, when we talk about fixed income instruments, we're referring to what we call government bonds. You know, we have securities, you know, and then there are income instruments that you can predetermine the interest rates at entry. So, for instance, I'm getting into the investment that say an expected return on investment of 30% after a period of 5 years. It is guaranteed that after 5 years, I will get that 30% return on investment. Yes, it happens for a very long period, but it is fixed and it is not as risky as the variable income instruments. And that's why we can see that in Fund 3 is heavy on fixed income instruments. And that's because contributors here, this fund basically is for customers that have not just retired, but customers that have also started accessing pensions. So now, Laspec holds a bond ceremony, like one is coming up on Friday. We hold a bond ceremony and we get a list of contributors that will be participating at the bond ceremony. The first thing your PFA should do is to ensure that all of the funds of the participants is moved to Fund 4. Why? Because those participants are ready to start accessing their pensions. So now, for Fund 4, Fund 5 is not just for those that are retired, it is also for those that are retired and are ready to start accessing their pensions. So every retiree is expected to commence payment of pensions, be it lump sum and monthly pensions, from what we call the Fund 4 account. Now, this account is a special account because it's for our parents. Once you retire and start earning pensions, it's expected that everything in your RSA goes to Fund 4. And in Fund 4, we only just invest 10% of the portfolio on variable income instruments. Yes, we've gotten retirees come to us to say, why am I not in Fund 3, why am I not in Fund 2, why is the return on investment so low and all of that. And we try to explain to them, Mommy, Daddy, you're very old. I mean, the risk that you can take, you can't take as much risk as you could while you're in employment. And so when you hear Fund 2, Fund 4, Fund 3, this is basically what it's all about. And we have just 10% of Fund 4 going into variable income instruments, and that's supposed to be 90%, my bad. So we have 90% of the portfolio going into fixed income instruments, and that's because we need to ensure that the future of all our retirees are secured. Now we have the Fund 5, and recently the micro pension scheme opened up. And basically, the micro pension scheme is for the unofficial sector in the industry. We have the mechanics, we have the association of barbers, we have the butchers, you know, we have a lot of them, Okada riders, that are interested in joining the contributory pension scheme. Now, there's a separate fund that was opened for this category of people. We refer to them as the micro pension scheme. Now, this scheme, Fund 5 scheme, was open for them, and this is where we have the contributions of the micro pension participants being paid into to. So if you have a micro pensions account, it's not so applicable to us here, then your contributions will go into Fund 5. And also we have the Fund 6. What the Fund 6 basically is for religious people, category of people who say, you know what, I don't want return on investment, it's against my belief, we don't believe in getting interest on whatever we have. So what PENCOM has done is that they've given this platform for such category of people, and we just put their contributions here in Fund 4, and they don't really get interest basically on what they have with us, just to keep their money there. Do we have any questions? Can I go to the next slide, please? Okay. All right. Okay. So a contributor must apply to switch between funds. Like we said earlier, if you want to move from Fund 2 to Fund 1, you will need to apply to your PFA to get your funds moved from Fund 2 to Fund 1. However, you don't have to make a request to move your funds from Fund 2 to Fund 3 because that's by default. The moment you clock 50, automatically your pensions will move from Fund 2 to Fund 3. So that's done automatically because once the PFA realizes that you are at the verge of accessing your pensions contribution, automatically your funds will be moved from Fund 3 to Fund 4. So we can see the pictorial analysis we gave there. Fund 1 is a very young guy that is still very active. You can see the Fund 2 guy is getting old, Fund 3, and of course Fund 4 is now a granddad. Alright, so we're going to the benefit withdrawal options and the grounds for withdrawals. We have contributors come to go to PFA to say, okay, I lost my job, or I'm retired, or I need to have access to my pensions, and I need to get money and all of that. So we always have to sensitize these people on that the pension industry is not a bank. It's not the place you run to when you're out of funds. We need to also explain to our employees that you don't go to the PFA when you're broke. We have people come to us to say that I don't have money, I'm saying I have millions in my RSS, and I'm going to explain what that means. Now, if currently I stopped to work because of my health conditions, then I would need to have been certified by my employer that my disengagement or my termination or my exit is due to me not being able to carry out my responsibilities. What that means is that my exit letter will show that Mrs. BB has been relieved of her duties because of her inability to carry on with the responsibilities that have been given unto her in the organization. Now, I cannot approach my PFA that I have been exited based on health grounds if my exit letter does not support that. So before you can say that you have exited employment based on health grounds, you need to first of all have a letter from your employer that says that the reason you exited employment was because of your ill health. So it is very important to explain to our colleagues that you don't exit on health grounds without it being authenticated by your employer. That's the first thing. Also, before you can say that you have exited on health grounds, you also need to get a medical certificate from a public practicing hospital. So you cannot, yes, sometimes you accept medical certificates from reputable private hospitals. Because of the nature of the country and things that are going on, it will be subject to a lot of scrutiny. So what we always advise is that when people have such issues, they should ensure that the medical certificate is from a public hospital. So first I said you need to have a letter authenticating the ill health from the employer, and secondly you need to have a medical certificate from a public hospital. Now with those two documents, you're certain that you will have access to your pension funds because now your employer has also supported that you exited employment based on ill health, and also you have a genuine letter from a medical practitioner in a public hospital. So now we have health grounds. You can exit employment based on health ground, and of course, you can have access to your RSA if you exit employment on health grounds. Now we have the loss of job. The loss of job basically is talking about employees that leave service prior to maybe termination, maybe voluntary retirement sometimes. We also have those, during this COVID period, we experienced a lot of downsizing and people being laid off and, redundancy and all of that. Now that's what we refer to as loss of job. This category of people are people that leave employment prior to attaining the age of 50 years old. And once you leave your employment prior to attaining the age of 50 years old, you will be categorized as under the category of loss of job. Now we have the early retirement. We understand that for you to retire, you need to have clocked 60 years of age, or you should have spent 35 years, maximum of 35 years in service. So we have people that have neither clocked 60 years of old and they haven't spent 35 years in service, but they are above 50. Now those are people we categorize as the early retirees. They say, okay, you know what, I'm 55 years old, I'm tired, I think I'm done, I think I want to have an early retirement. As long as you're 50, you can be referred to as a retiree, just that we'll categorize you as an early retiree. That's also a ground for withdrawal. And of course, we have the mandatory retirement, and this is the category that we all are conversant with. Now, these are people that have spent 35 years in service, or people that have clocked 60 years old, and this is the most common category for retirement under the pension scheme. Now we have the withdrawal options. We have the envelope payments. What the envelope payments really means is that for you to retire and have access to your pension, to start earning monthly pension, your RSA balance needs to be 550,000 and above. Now we've had instances whereby contributors have more than that. For such contributors, of course, they get lump sum and monthly pensions. Now we have people that have 549,000, we have people that have 300,000, we have people that have just 150,000 in their RSs. Now for such people, what they will be accessing is what we refer to as envelope payments. They will have access to clear everything in their RSA. And that's because the balance in their pension account is not sufficient to pay them a lump sum and then place them on monthly pension subsequently. Now we understand that when you access your pensions, you can get lump sum and start earning monthly pension. But you'd agree with me that getting a lump sum out of 550,000 and also being placed on monthly pension basically would make no sense. So the PECOM has said that okay, if you have 549,000, you can collect everything in your RSA because it will suffice to pay you monthly pensions and then also pay you a lump sum. This is subject to review. In fact, we got a letter from PECOM early this year that the value has been moved up. However, that letter was withdrawn. But we're expecting something in this regard. We have people that have 555,000. We have people that have 600,000, and they clamor to get everything in their RSA. We know that it's been reviewed, it's going to be pushed up, we just don't know to what value. And we're going to get an update on this very, very soon. Also, we have the 25% relief payment, and this is applicable to contributors that leave employment prior to clocking 50 years of age. Now, if you lose your job by means of either termination, resignation, redundancy, or whatever it is, and you are not up to 50 years old, you would have access to get 25% of your RSA balance. I know for Lagos State it's after 3 months. Industry standard is 4 months. So you can approach your PFA or whatever PFA you use, and I'm sure this can be achievable, provided that your RSA has been reconciled by your parastatal or your ministry, and you are not indebted to that parastatal. You would have access to 25% of whatever you have contributed in your pension account. Now, let me clarify that for 25% relief payments, you can only access this 25% once in your lifetime, and thereafter till you clock 50, where you earn lump sum and place on monthly pensions. Now, we have people that have access to 25% once. they get another employment, or they're reemployed or reabsorbed, and after contributing for another 5 years, they lose their job again, and then they approach the PFA. So what you tell them is that you would no longer have access to another 25% until when you clock 50. And that's because, I mean, by the time you keep getting 25% from your pension, by the time you retire, there'll be nothing for you to retire on. So 25% relief payment can only be accessed once. Another thing we like to explain to everybody present here this morning is that when an employee loses his or her job, and after waiting, say, 4 months, the employee gets another job, and the employee gets at least 1 month's contribution in the RSA, that employee would no longer be able to have access to 25%. And that's because the account is now funded. Now, when you bring your exit letter to your PFA, and you show your PFA that, okay, I lost my job in, say, December 2020, and this is May 2021, I would like to have access to 25%. The first thing your PFA will do is to check your RSA account. Now, what are they looking for? What we're looking for is that we need to ascertain that exit letter to the contribution dates in your account. So if you say that you have retired in December 20, you were sacked, or you lost your job in 2020, and you want to access the 25%, when your PFA looks at your pension account and they see that a new remittance came in, they ask you 2 questions. They tell you, this remittance that came in, is it from a new employer, or is it an outstanding that your former employer was owing you? So once we can clarify that it was an outstanding that been paid by your former employer, then you're good to go. However, if the PFA finds out that the new inflow is from an entirely different employer, in fact a new employer, then you will not be able to have access to 5% of the pension contribution, because we will see that you will be able to get another job. And what the just said really is that you can access 25 relief payments within withdrawal. And of course, we have the annuity. Now, these 2 modes of withdrawal basically is for customers that have above 550,000 in their RSAs, and customers, of course, that are clocked 50 and above. And we call these categories full accessing of the RSA. Of course, the envelope is also full accessing of the RSA, just that you are not on monthly pension. We don't consider it to be the scheme because you've been paid off. For 25%, you just have access to a portion of your pension contribution. But for program grant and annuity, you get to have access to everything you have contributed in your RSA. You get to have a lump sum and also be placed on periodic payments, which can be quarterly or monthly. Now, we all know that program withdrawal and annuity are very similar. I heard something about that when we sat down, and I know that we still talk about it as this presentation proceeds. So basically, I like to explain that program withdrawal is a product of PFAs, while annuity is a product of insurance companies. But one thing is paramount, and what's paramount is that every retiree has the right to be placed to get lump sum before choosing to go on program withdrawal or annuity. So that the retiree, irrespective of your preferred mode of pension payment, you should get the lump sum. However, we have customers that have said, okay, I know that the law says I should get the lump sum. What if I don't want the lump sum? That's possible, as long as it's based on the consent of the retiree. So you can decide that you want to consolidate your monthly pensions contribution, meaning that you want to make it firmer, you want to be able to earn a higher monthly pension. So you tell your PFA that I don't want a lump sum payment, I've saved more than enough while I was working. I just want to be able to earn the highest monthly pension possible. You can opt for a 0 lump sum and then use everything you have in your RSA to fund your monthly pension. I mean, that's solely a decision that has to be made by the retiree. But note that once you make that decision, you will not have access to that lump sum again. So that's on program withdrawal. Also annuity, of course. Basically, what annuity means is that after being paid your lump sum with your PFA, you decide to move your the rest of your RSA into the portfolio of the insurance company for the purpose of earning pensions for a longer duty. So we've just brought a little bullet point for understanding program renewal and annuity, and I'm just going to glance through it because I know that there is a session that has been designed for this. So we have the payment and administration of custody of funds. Both lump sum and annuity have been administered by what we call the pension fund custodian. So they are both secured, they are both safe. You can't say that if I go to annuity today, my money is going to get embezzled. No. Or if I leave my money to PFA, something will happen to my funds. No. They are both secured. So you can be rest assured that irrespective of the mode of withdrawal you choose, your funds are secured. Now we have the payment period. And this is basically where we have a little bit of difference. Now for the payment period, on program withdrawal, your pension has been designed to last for an expected lifespan. Meaning that if you choose program withdrawal as the mode of pensions, you would earn pensions for an expected lifespan. And then it's usually between 31 and 32 years. Now we have annuity. Annuity also has been designed to pay pensions for as long as the retiree lives. However, annuity is only guaranteed for 10 years. I know the person taking that position will do justice to me, so I'll just leave it there. We have the frequency of payments. You can decide to earn your pensions on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis, whichever is applicable to you is what the PFA will do. Of course, we have the pension review, and this is basically applicable to program withdrawal. And it's possible because when the customer is on program withdrawal, the pension assets is still in the fund of the customer. So PFAs are able to distinct individual funds. The funds are individualized such that when you are as long as they've been on program withdrawal. So what happened was that PFAs were told to do a review of the age of pensioners and run it against their RSA balance. For customers that are surplus or excess, and when I mean excess, I mean looking at what this customer earns, looking at the balance in the account, and looking at the customer's age, you will see that even after this customer passes on, there will still be a lot of money in the RSA. So the National Pension Commission came up with what we call the pension enhancement, and it's done every 3 years. Now it means that for customers that have been on monthly pension for 3 years and above, their RSA accounts are subject to review against increased monthly pension. The first one was done in 2017. Retirees moved to annuity, they are unable to enjoy what we call pension enhancement, and that's because when you move to annuity, your fund becomes part of the pool of funds, and they are unable to individualize what interest belongs to you and all of that. So I'll just leave it there. We have the change of withdrawal mode. Of course, we all know that when you're on program withdrawal is very flexible. I mean, there's flexibility with program withdrawal. You can decide to move to annuity after a year. You can even decide to move to another PFA. We're going to talk about that very soon. But when you're on annuity, then annuity is like a life policy between an insurance. And I'm sure they'll come to their PDO that well to say, okay, this pension account, I heard that pension account will last you for 10 years, pension account will last you for 15 years, and after that, we don't know what's going to happen. We've just added this slide so that we can have an idea of what the pension industry looks like. Now, we've had customers that have been on pensions for as long as 12 years. We've had customers that have been on pensions for just a month. So we just want everyone to have like a picture understanding to what we talk about when we say that PFAs are responsible for investing pension funds so that the value of the pension will continue to increase. Now, the pensions was 474,000. During the first announcement in 2017, this customer was not eligible. Also, during the second pension enhancement, this customer was not eligible because this customer had just been on pension for 2 years and 6 months. Remember, I said for you to enjoy pension enhancement, you will need to have been on pension for 3 years and above. And of course, the customer's expected RSA balance after 2 years and 6 months was meant to be 43 million. At that time, when we were doing this presentation, this customer still had 61 million in the RSA account. So these are things we would like retirees to understand when they're making decisions, so that they can understand that, okay, even after being on pensions on PW for 10 years, I still have enough money. My money is not going anywhere. I mean, the scheme has been properly planned by the authorities, by Laspec, by Pension, to ensure that everybody earns money for as long as they live. So I'm going to be moving to the third customer here, the same thing is applicable. This customer has been on pension for 5 years and 3 months. The expected balance was supposed to be 8.3 million, and this customer has 22 million. And of course, the last customer, the expected balance was supposed to be at a negative. And this is one thing I wanted to explain to all of us here this morning. It's possible that your balance is at a negative. Now, you can still be earning pensions based on the interest, the return on interest that your PFA is giving, depending on the performance of the PFA. It's also possible. So we're just going to be running through the next slide. And we're going to be talking about additional voluntary contributions. We understand that the pension scheme, the contribution that goes into the pension scheme is capped at 18%. Now, you would have a deduction of 8% from source, and then 10% will be paid by your employer. However, the industry allows for additional savings. And this is just so that you're able to consolidate what you have in your RSA toward retirement. And you can decide to commence additional voluntary contribution into your pension account with at any time. You can do it monthly, you can do it quarterly, you can do it once in a year. But there are laws that guide that regulates the additional voluntary contribution. Now, for you to do additional contribution, of course, the funds you're contributing will need to come from your monthly salary. What that means is that you cannot bring funds from outside of your paid employment to put in your pension account. It's not allowed. It will need to come from your human resources or from your finance department. And of course, for voluntary contribution, you can have access to these funds even prior to retirement. Now, what that means is that you can decide to have access to 50% of your additional voluntary contribution after the maturity age of 2 years. So if I start additional voluntary contribution now, and I say I start to contribute 5,000 naira, before I can have access to that fund, I'll need to let it stay in my RSA account for 2 years. Now, even at that 2 years, what I will be able to have access to will be the 50% of what I have contributed that has stayed 2 years in my RSA. And that's because the reason for the additional voluntary contribution is that contributors into the scheme are encouraged to make savings towards their retirement, and so that the savings that you are making would not even be cleared before you retire. And prior to now, contributors could clear all of their ADCs with interest and of course with a little token as tax. But the regulators saw that this was being abused because we had people that would contribute this month and 2 months after they are taking it back because of the interest. So that was stopped. But then the maturity date was introduced and it began, you had to wait for 2 years before you could have access to 50% of your contributions. And of course, you can decide that you don't want to have access to it until 5 years after. If you're accessing your contribution 5 years after, then it will not be subject to tax. However, if you're accessing your contributions 2 years or less than 5 years, you would have to get tax and pay tax to the government. Another benefit of additional voluntary contribution is that it reduces the value of tax you pay to government. I know that my neighbors and people won't like to hear this, but then if you start to do additional voluntary contribution, rather than subject your basic on a particular amount, the moment you start to save, it reduces the percentage of your funds that goes to the government as tax. That's by the side. Another thing about additional voluntary contribution and why we always encourage contributors to this scheme to cap this is that of course they allow you to live a better life at retirement, and you can even make projections toward retirement. If you say that when I retire I'm going to earn a particular amount of money as pensions, you can make use of the show cow, you can make use of any calculator to determine, okay, this is what I have. You can even approach your PFA to give you projections. We can make a template simulation ahead of retirement for you so that, okay, I want to retire with this amount of funds. How much do I need to save? And you can work around it to ensure that it will be tailored to your own perspective. And of course, you can access it as en bloc, 50% after 2 years, and the likes. Also, we're going to be moving to what we call why a will is important. It's our prayer that all of our customers would live long to enjoy the fruits of their labor, and that's the prayer of every PFA in Nigeria. However, death is inevitable, and we've had so many issues around death benefits, and that's why we're telling our PDO's presence here today that we need to do a lot more sensitization in this regard. We have so many of us that we have pension accounts, we have money at the bank and all sorts, but we don't have a will. And one thing that is important in pension industry is that you will need to get a will before your pension can be accessed. Now, for you to access your pensions, you have to get a will. But if the owner of the pension account passes on without writing a will, then the family members will be subject to getting what we call the letters of administration. Now, the LOAs are very, very expensive to get. In fact, it takes forever to get an LOA. You need to do a lot. It is costly. I mean, why would you want to put your beneficiaries through the stress when you can tidy up a business yourself? You can only get a will and it becomes effective until death. You know, so we advise that we sensitize our employees to try and get a will so that their estate will be secured even at death. And we've had so many issues around death benefits and also that we don't even want to delve into at this moment. So it's advisable to get a will even while you're still alive. You can go to any PFA, you can go to any insurance company, and I'm sure they can get them linked with a very, very affordable will. Of course, the benefit of having a will is immeasurable. It ensures that your possession will be distributed as you wish. You appoint and outline powers of an executor or a trustee. You can appoint a guardian for minor children. I mean, your children are underage, they are not up to 18, and you want to have a will. You can still get a will, you know, you can get a guardian for them. The moment they clock 18, you can hand over the will and the estate to them. Of course, if you reduce the stress, the heartache of blood drones, who would have been subjected to go through the rigors of obtaining a letter of administration. It's very difficult to get, trust me. You don't really want anyone to go through that. Of course, you can also set up a trustee for your loved ones. And lastly, it's less expensive for your beneficiaries and obtains that a PFA can decide to move their pension contribution from one pension fund administrator to another. This change can only be made once a year in determining what pension fund administrator continues to manage his pension. It means that we need to tell our people that you shouldn't move them. Of us to move. No. It's your ISA and you have the responsibility in choosing what PFA that has completed the data recapture exercise with your current PFA. So, at this juncture,
good morning, my name is Boo. I'm just going to talk a little bit about living pension. I'm not going to take our time. Thank you for Muslima for that presentation. Living pension PFA was formed by the consortium. Said here we will have heard about legal assurance in one way or the other. Legal assurance is an indigenous organization in Nigeria of today. As we speak, legal assurance has completed about 50 years and above in 2004. The PFA actually told the PFA to recapitalize to 1 billion naira. So for us, our own capital share, 525 billion naira, which is still growing. Out of this 525 billion naira, we are okay, and Swiss Re is a global market leader. Swiss Re is also the second largest reinsurance company in the world. So we can see that Leadway Pension also have an international backing. See, we have Swiss Re in Mexico, Latin America, India, Brazil. My time is almost up. India, Brazil, Asia, China, and Indonesia. Okay. Why has our customers chosen Leadway Pension? For Leadway Pension, our customers have chosen us because of excellent customer service delivery. We deliver our prompt PIN generation. This is we also have good return on investment, competitive return on investment for you to be able to identify with Leadway Pension PFA. We also have efficient benefit administration structure, advisory service. We give advisory service to our customers, personalized service and access, integrated end-to-end financial delivery. And I will not be able to explain all of this very well because of my time. We also got an award from Lagos State Pension Commission Laspec for customer excellence service delivery. We also got an award recently, just about 3 months ago, for the best customer. That is the for the best customer experience. And this award was given to us in 2001 African Standard for International Organization for Standardization. an organization have this standard, it means that you're top notch. What does it also mean? It means that your data is safe with us. It means that we are easier to access to global market. It means that our service is world class. And the certified that we have is for ISMS, that is information messages. It means that all your data with us are very safe. A lot of PFAS organizations are collecting lots of data right now. We have your name, you have your NOK, you have your NIN, you have your PVN. So this information that we have, it means that they are very, very safe with us. How can you reach Libre Pension PFA? We can reach us through a lot of our, this is our service channels. We have our SMS platform. You can download our mobile app. Our mobile app is very functional. With Libre Pension mobile app, you can sit right there at the comfort of your home, and you'll be able to access your benefits. If you go to our online application, you can also visit our online, which is online.libre-pension.com to enroll with Libre Pension PFA. Thank you very much.
We start for question and answer. If you have any questions, could you please raise up your hand? If you have questions. Okay, not everyone. Okay.
Withdrawals from the account probably because of loss of job or something. You drop to the next fund, possibly from fund 2 to fund 3. So when I make withdrawal, probably because of loss of job, does the fund automatically drop even when my age has not gotten to the level where it should drop? That's one. Then 2, you didn't mention anything relating to mortgage, because I know a lot of employees, one of the concern is mortgage. And is there any relationship between the pension contribution and the mortgage that's been granted?
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so I'm going to go to the first question. Now, whether you access 25% or not does not determine where your fund will be domiciled. Your fund is domiciled in the portfolio that works according to your age. So if you access 25% when you're 35 years old, your fund will still be in fund 2, except you ask that your PFA moves your fund to fund 1. Also, if you access 25% when you are 50 years old, your fund will still be in fund 3. The only time your fund will move when you access your pensions will be when you retire and you want to start getting monthly pension and you access lump sum payments. Then automatically your funds will move from fund 3 to retiree fund, which is the fund 4. That's the only time when your funds will move from one fund to another, and that's moving from fund 3 to fund 4. You cannot move from fund 2 to fund 4. You can only move from fund 2 to fund 3, and that's also automatic, which is also because of your age. So anyone that clocks 50 would automatically be moved from fund 2 to fund 3. I hope that answers that, sir. All right, sir. So the next question on the mortgage. The pension industry is solely for the purpose of getting pensions after retirement. However, I can't take out the fact that the regulators, Laspec, Pencom, they are looking at that aspect. But for now, there's nothing that has to do with mortgage on the pension scheme. It's something that's become very common in the industry, and I'm sure that very soon something would be done concerning that. Thank you very much.
The employer's contributions will be removed, and employee contribution will be paid. Without the employee contribution, the whole sum, will it be paid to the dismissed staff or not?
Thank you for the question, sir. So, in case of dismissal, like you said, sir, the employer portion is going to be returned to the employer, and the employee will be left with the employee portion. As long as the contributor involved is less than 50, the only thing the contributor would have access to is 25% of that RSC contribution. However, once the contributor clocks 50, he or she can have full access to the RSC account. And even when the person clocks 50 and the money in that account is over 50,000, the contributor will not be able to get everything in the account. The law of lump sum and monthly pension will still apply. But if the fund is lesser than 550, of course, you can clear everything in the RSC, providing it's 50 and above. Thank you.
How is the cooperative body going to get their money? Since the new scheme, the organization does not have access to the money. How the cooperative gets my concern is, when you are dismissed or you want to withdraw and you are paying cooperative or other money, how are they going to get their fund? That is my question.
Internally. Okay, because you cannot access any employee's RSC. The legal state pension law is being reviewed right now. You know, prior to this time, if an employee is dismissed, we would recall the employer's contribution. PENCOM says no. And so that we will not be able to touch anybody's RSC for whatsoever reason. So if somebody is indebted to you, you have to find a way to ensure that they pay up. Okay? So we need to tidy up that end. By the time I come to my presentation, I will expand on that. Thank you.
Maybe because I'm not a financial person, but you need to let us know what's that for 6. Yeah.
Every fund has to be invested. Now, what percentage of return on investment they have, ROI, is now subject to how actively the investment instruments that we key into is. So for fund 6, we are not so keen on getting the return on investment, because we know that whatever comes on the fund, the customers are not, they don't want the interest. So yes, you can see that it's broken out into portfolios. However, we are not keen on it, and it's broken into portfolio because the regulation says that no fund in the pension industry should lay fallow.
To such fellow, what happens? Will you open a new RSA for such person? Because we have a situation where someone is in this scenario. We now discover that he has not received his accrued rights. He's now requesting for that particular portion. Meanwhile, he said he has already accessed his RSA and he has started collecting pension. So the question is, where do we pay the accrued right into? Thank you.
Now, in this instance, the customer has moved to annuity. What would happen is that the PFA would reactivate that PIN, because when somebody moves to annuity, or when we pay beneficiary death benefits, we deactivate those PINs. So now when the customer comes back to us and tells us that I have another job, I'm an annuitant, or I have an outstanding payment from my former employer, when we get the contribution or the payments or the accrued right, we reactivate the PIN, allow the funds to come in. Now, it's two things. If the customer is just getting a one-off payment, and the one-off payment is below 100,000, we pay everything to the customer. Now, if the one-off payment is above 100,000, it will be run through a template. Now, the template will determine the lump sum the customer will get. And since the customer is an annuitant, after getting the lump sum value, everything left in the account will be given to the retiree to get the policy from the insurance company, such that the insurance company also creates another policy and then, of course, increase the customer's monthly pension. So, and also if it's a continuous inflow, we leave the account to keep running. When the customer retires again, the law will apply, we calculate your money as lump sum again, and then the rest of the value will be transferred to the insurance company for your annuity. So it's that straightforward. Thank you.
Office, we have requested for the refund for over a year now, and we have not been refunded. I'm talking about the employer. So how long does it take to refund the money? Thank you.
They will tell you to go and do data recapture from your previous PFA. Now, when you get to your PFA, they will tell you that they cannot do it for you again. So, moving from is not easy. Even from most of our staff that want to move, that have moved, their money is still in their former PFA. So I don't understand this transfer with thing.
Without a will, how do we about the process? That's one. The second one, this window of 18, just like Madam has said, we are asked to actually get a letter. Even after getting the letter, till now it has not been transferred. How do we go about it? And the last one, we had a government trying to borrow money from our pension. Is it business-like, or is just like they borrow the money and nothing comes about? Because what you see is factual. Those are the figures. But behind this, what happens? This is share.
Thank you, sir. So for registry to get a will, most of the time they need to get a lawyer, or they can try to do it themselves, irrespective of whatever channel they use. They would need to get a letter of administration before they can access the contribution to the RSA. That's on the first question. Now on the second question, which is pension on transfer window. Like I said earlier, there's going to be a session on transfer window, and I'm sure that you can ask all the questions and concerns you have on transfer window. But I'm sure that that would clarify the uncertainties you have around transfer window. Now, on government borrowing, dipping their hand into pension fund. We don't know where that came from really, but one thing we like to tell everyone is that the pension industry has been investing into federal government bonds from the beginning of this scheme. So we don't know when people say that the government wants to borrow pension funds. I mean, when we refer to government bonds, treasury bills, these are the things that the instruments that we use, for investment, and it's very secure, it's very safe. And I mean, this pension industry is solid. I'm sure we all know that. I'm sure Laspec knows that. And you have Laspec at the back end. It is solid, and it's not going to fail. So government is not dipping their hand into anybody's funds. The funds are very, very, in fact, it is too secure. It's impossible for the scheme to fail with the way it is. Thank you, sir.
To be taken by the Director Inspectorate, in person of Mrs. Bukola Oyeleke. Let's give her a round of applause. A round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you very much for coming today. I'll be speaking to you on the RSA transfer process, the transfer window, the transfer you've all been asking about, and all those a lot of people have questions about. So I'll just speak briefly. It's going to be a short presentation on the transfer process. So like she said, the National Pension Commission officially opened the transfer window on the 16th of November 2020. I'm sure you're all aware we've been waiting for the transfer window to open since, because people have been asking when can they transfer their account from one PFA to the other. And we've been saying when the transfer window opens. So the transfer window has been opened finally. So what it means is that, okay. So according to Section 13 of the Pension Reform Act 2014, a holder of a retirement savings account maintained under the Act may not more than once in a year transfer his account from one pension administrator to the other. So to facilitate the implementation of this Section 13, the National Pension Commission has deployed the RSA transfer system, the RTS. The approved transfer of an employee's retirement savings account from one PFA to another, resulting from a request initiated by the RSA holder through the receiving PFA and submitted to National Pension Commission, PENCOM, through the RSA transfer system. So what it means is that if an employee, an RSA holder, registered with PFA and wants to move his account, his RSA, to another PFA, let's say PFA B, the RSA holder is the one going to initiate the transfer process. But before they can do that, there are some things that the RSA holder needs to do. And the first thing is, like she mentioned, you need to do the data recapture. Every RSO holder needs to do a data recapture. I'm sure the PFAs have been coming to your offices to do data recapture for your employees, because they've been moving around and they've been doing it, and you can also do it in their offices. All RSO holders need to do the data recapture. And then before anybody can transfer their accounts, their RSA from one PFA to another, they need to do the data recapture. So that is the first thing they need to do. So once the RSO holder does the data recapture, first of all, when do you do the data recapture? You do it with your registered PFA. So that's why someone mentioned something about data recapture. They said you need to do it with your data registered PFA. So if you are registered with PFA A, you go and do your data recapture with PFA A. Then you now go and initiate the transfer process with PFA B. That's the receiving PFA. So you do your data recapture with PFA A, the PFA you are registered with, and then you go to the receiving PFA, PFA B, to initiate the transfer process. The transfer process cannot be initiated if the data recapture hasn't been done. So maybe that's why some people said the process hasn't been, they started the process and it wasn't done. You can't, if the data recapture hasn't been done, then they cannot initiate that process. So it's very important that you inform your employees that they need to do the data recapture in the PFA that they are registered with presently. So the RSA transfer is initiated by the RSA holder through the pension fund administration to which the account is being transferred. That's the receiving PFA. The PFA you are registered with is the transferring PFA. So what the RSA holder, the RSA holder provides this RSA pin. So when you get to the receiving PFA, what are the things that they're going to ask you for? First of all, they will confirm that you've done the data recapture. Then the RSA holder, you need to provide your RSA pin to the receiving PFA. Provide your RSA pin, your surname, your telephone number, and email address to the receiving PFA. Those are the things you're going to ask for. So first you need to do the data recapture. Then you go to the receiving PFA to initiate the transfer process. And then you provide your RSA pin. Remember you have an RSA pin with the PFA you are registered with. So you provide your RSA pin, your surname, your telephone number, email address to the receiving PFA. Now that's good. Okay, then once the file data is validated, what that means, file data is validated, that's the data recapture is done. If the data recapture hasn't been done, then we cannot validate your file data. So that's important that the data recapture is done, so your file data can be validated. The fingerprint is captured and to authenticate his or her identity and complete the process. So first data recapture, then we go to your receiving PFA to initiate the transfer process. Your receiving PFA asks for your RSA pin, your surname, your telephone number, your email address. You validate your file data, your fingerprint is captured, and then to authenticate your identity and then conclude the process. The RSA holder receives updates on the RSA transfer status via email provided or notification via SMS through the telephone number provided. The reason why you have to go to your receiving PFA to initiate the transfer. We all know if you go to your PFA, the PFA you are registered with, and you now tell them, oh, I want to transfer my account from you to another, you know they will try and discourage you, and they will ask you what is the problem, what is it, we will give you whatever it is you want. That is why you go to your PFA doesn't even need to know that you want to transfer your account. All you need to do is just do the data recapture and then go to the PFA you want your account to be moved to start the process. However, we have some employees that have double registration, registered in more than one PFA. Some might maybe before they joined your parastatal. So you go to the new PFA now, request for a statement
So you can confirm the balance they sent. You probably have a statement from the previous PFA. You can confirm with the new statement given to you from your new PFA to confirm that accurate balance was transferred with the interest and all. Okay, so this is just the transfer process flow. So data recapture, which is the first thing any RSA holder needs to do to transfer their account. RSA transfer initiation, you can initiate the transfer process with the receiving PFA. Fingerprint capture to authenticate identity, that will be done with the receiving PFA. RSA receives updates on the transfer status, that will also be done by the receiving PFA. Then notification of transfer will be sent to the RSA holder. Okay, so there are some reasons why some people were mentioning that they have done the transfer and, or they had initiated the transfer and it wasn't done. So these are some reasons why, transfer requests might be rejected. If the RSA holder initiated the transfer within the last 365 days, the speaker from Leadership mentioned a transfer, a RSA holder can only transfer his account once in a year, once in a calendar year, or in 365 days. So if the RSA holder initiated the transfer within the last 365 days, then the transfer request will be rejected. Also, if the data of the RSA holder has not been recaptured on the Enhanced Contributors Registration System, ECRS, so which is the data recapture. So if you haven't done the data recapture, then the transfer request will be rejected. Another thing is if the validation of fingerprints of the RSA holder fails on the NIMC database, which is why I said fingerprints, they're also going to take the fingerprints when you get to the receiving PFA. So if that fails, the transfer process also, the transfer request cannot go through, that will be rejected. If the receiving PFA is not eligible to administer the RSA, what it means is that if the receiving PFA is, like now from Lagos State, is not one of the approved pension fund administrators, because we have 16 pension fund administrators. So if someone goes to a PFA that is not one of the approved PFAs, then the request will be rejected. Okay, so eligible people for RSA transfers. Every RSA holder whose biodata have been recaptured on the ECRS. So everyone that has done the data recapture, basically. Retirees in the contributory pension scheme. Retirees who can transfer their RSAs from one PFA to the other. Retirees in the contributory pension scheme. They can decide to transfer their RSAs every once a year. Then retirees on annuity who are making voluntary contributions can also transfer their RSAs. So those who can also decide they want to move from one PFA to another for no reason, they can transfer their RSAs. And let me also say that you don't need a reason to transfer your RSA from one PFA to another. You don't need a reason. If you want to feel post service delivery, return on investments, I just feel I want to move to another PFA. You don't need a reason to move. Anyone can decide to change their PFA as long as it's within 1 year, 365 days. You can move your RSA as many times as you want. So we have I have a list of approved pension fund administrators. We have 16 of them. We had 15 before. One was just approved recently, Hope Pensions. But I know usually whenever we go to our status for inspection, sometimes they don't know all the approved PFAs. So we have ARM pensions, premium pensions, Crusader Sterling pensions, Leadway pensions, NLPC PFA, Trust Fund pensions, Stanbic IBTC managers, Pension Alliance Limited, which is PAR. We have Radix pensions, Fidelity pensions, ICO pensions, FCMB pensions, Sigma pensions, Veritas Glanville pensions, AXA Manta pensions, and Oak pensions. It's Oak pensions that was just approved recently. So I know some parasitals have some employees that were registered with Oak pensions, and we told them that they need to move. So if you have any employees that are registered with Oak pensions, they can remain with Oak pensions now. Because Lagos State has approved Oak pensions as one of its PFAs. So basically, that is my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, madam. That is, we'll look into that. That is a very serious allegation. Because all RSO holders should do their data recapture. It has nothing to do with transfer or anything. Because if you don't even do your data recapture, when you retire as a retiree, you can't access your benefits if you don't do your data recapture. So the data recapture is mandated. Everyone should do the data recapture. So the PFA is now saying you can't do a data recapture, you can't do your data recapture because they want you to transfer, they don't want you to move to another PFA. They will definitely look into that. You have anything to say?
She's very correct actually. But to be fair on PFAs, the ECRS platform has just been very, very funny since the inception of this transfer window. However, there are ways around it. PENCOM has also noticed this, and I think the last meeting we had, what PENCOM said is that, okay, we know that some PFAs have issues during that recapture exercise. So what's going to happen in the coming months is that PENCOM is going to start using agents to do data recapture exercise. So if you want to transfer your funds from one PFA to another, and the PFA, as part of their strategy, is trying to hold on to the DRE exercise, then you can walk up to any agent from the receiving PFA to do your DRE. So it's going to improve in the coming months.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, sir.
So let me talk like I mean the problem.
The other PFAs and see how we can improve it. Are there any other questions? Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
It is not deliberate that we want to cause you trouble, let us see, because the rules must be followed to the letter. We need to see how you have applied those rules, because what you pay is actually what has accrued over the years. So if somebody joins service at age 45 and you are paying the accrued right for that person, then we want to subject that person to the old rule, even though you are under the contributory pension scheme. Let me explain that. Contributory pension scheme, you do not have access to it, so it is yours. You have earned that. You contribute, the government also contributes. You have earned it. But the old scheme is subject to many rules that we need to apply. So people joined maybe an agency just 3 months before the contributory pension. You also have to pay them their accrued rights for that 3 months. Okay? And you cannot pay that person what somebody who has spent 10 years. Do you understand? So if somebody joined just 3 months before the contributory pension scheme, that person also deserves an accrued right. But you will not pay that same person with somebody who has been on that job for 10 years. So those rules apply. Alright? So these are the things. So for retirees of the mainstream, if you spent less than 10 years before the contributory pension scheme started, you will lose your pension component. If you've only spent 5 years, what that means is that the contributory pension scheme started 1st of April 2007. If the person joined in 1998, let's say 4th September 1998, and the contributory and the old scheme ended 31st March 2007, that person spent about 9 years and some months. You cannot get the value for 10 years because you have not spent up to 10 years. That's the way it works, the old scheme, and which is what applies to people in the mainstream. I don't know how your consultant, I don't know if they factor that into your payments. I'm also aware that, so if you have spent less than 5 years, you also lose the money, okay, under the old rule. And then age 45, if you join at age 45, you lose the pension component as well.